Hello and welcome to Analog Shtick, a podcast all about video games. On today's show we have a special guest. He is one half of Flipfly, a two-man independent game development team based out of Wisconsin, USA, whose current game Race to Sun is on Steam's Greenlight. And there'll be a link for you to go to and you can give it a thumbs up afterwards and all that good stuff. He is Forrest San Filippo, and I have pronounced that right. I just want to check again.
Yep, you got it.
Awesome. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on, Forrest.
Oh, thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. I picked up the game the other day. You was kind enough to send me a copy, and I've put up a YouTube video that people can get to go and watch and have a play with it. And I thought, yeah, I'd bring you on and ask you about the game and ask you, some stuff about what you like to do and all this good stuff. So before we get on about Race to Sun, I'd like to ask you, did you play games growing up? What games and what consoles were you playing when you were younger?
Yeah, so when we grew up, we were my parents were definitely of the hippie generation. So electronics were not a big part of our early childhood, but it was pretty much irresistible when the Ataris started hitting our friends' houses. We were drawn to video games. So pretty soon we were definitely into the scene. So.
So were we talking like the proper old school Atari and then the Commodore 64 and that sort of stuff?
Right, right. So initially, the we didn't have any systems of our own, so we'd go to friends' houses and play. And then what we discovered is that our parents would pretty much let us get away with whatnot on our birthdays. So we would go out, and at that point, that was when you could still rent TVs, VCRs, and video game consoles from the local VHS rental facility.
Yeah.
And so we would rent them for a week or so around our birthday, and then we would try to play through an entire game during that week. And so that was kind of our initiation into the gaming scene. Stuff like the original Mario and
Of course, yep.
hmm
So, what age bracket are we talking of in the, should we say, kind of late 80s when, like, the NES was coming around?
Right, right. Yep, late 80s. And then as when the Super NES came out, we were a little bit older, and at that point we were getting little side jobs and odd jobs, so we were able to start renting them ourselves.
Yeah.
um, Ultimately, then, as the original consoles started to show up in rummage sales and whatnot, we ended up buying a few units of our own, an Atari and things like that, and building up our own collection.
Yeah. Was there any particular, genres you were drawn towards? Any particular favorites?
What I think really caught when the Super NES came out was Star Fox and things like that, racing
Well,
games.
that saves me having to ask the question that I will probably inevitably ask about Race to Sun at some point.
hmm
Yeah. Star Fox, obviously, a great game in the SNES. Is it other games of that types then? Those kind of flying style type games?
Yeah, I suppose so. I'm trying to think. I guess my childhood shouldn't be this as fuzzy as it is. Yeah, that's one of the ones that jumps out. Another one I just remember having a blast with was the Earthworm Jim games.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think I was my brother, the other half of Flipfly, the company. I don't know that he was ever quite so much into the Earthworm Jim games, but I just love the comedy genre, the physical comedy stuff, and so I got a kick out of those as well.
I found myself more drawn to the cartoon series, actually, because that was where I was first introduced to Earthworm Jim. And then it was after that I found out, oh, wait, this is actually a game as well. But, as you said, the physical comedy, but specifically in the cartoon and how that was put together. Good times. And now we're much older and have to be more mature about these things, but...
Do we? Oh,
well, apparently that's how it's supposed to go, but I haven't quite got that down yet. From your profile on your website, it says that you did graphics and web design for 13 years, or over 13 years. And I was wondering if you can tell me sort of how you made that transition from that into now working in indie game development. And I guess from there you can tell me exactly how Flipfly came to be.
Sure, sure. So my personal story, I skipped the college route and went into business ownership. Never really intended to do graphic design, but an opportunity presented itself to buy a small local business at a great deal. And so I learned graphic design on the job, and it turned into something that I really enjoyed, and I got pretty decent at it. Though I couldn't say that it was it wasn't my lifelong dream to be a graphic designer or a small business owner. So eventually I sold that business off, and I started doing some freelancing, trying to get into music and various things. I'm one of those folks who just never quite seems to like to settle on any one thing. And in the midst of this, my brother, he went the college route, and ended up getting a computer science degree and working for Raven Software, a division of Activision, one of Activision studios. So he was working on several games. Ended up on Modern Warfare 3, Call of Duty game. And all this while, we had been talking on and off about our childhood dream, which was to make video games together. We used to stay up late, just imagining ideas. We were very interested in creating new things and pushing the limits. I mean, if we had pursued it from our teenage days, we probably could have come up with some new ideas, but we just went the safer route, I guess.
Yeah.
And there wasn't much of an indie scene at that time. By the time we were in our teenage years, the scene was dominated by the AAA studios, and there was really no distribution possibility for any small studios at that point. So anyway, we kind of both got to a point where we said, hey, we're kind of sick of what we're doing. Let's go back to that dream. Let's start pushing some boundaries and create something creative. And so we quit our day jobs and went back to that.
And so, with Race to Sun, then, tell me, because you up to this point you've made, is it one other game so far? Is it the Monkey Drum?
Yes.
That's your first project that you started on then?
It was, yeah. That was kind of a labor of love. We're both fathers, and we both dabble in music. So creating an app for children to create music on was sort of something we thought would be pretty cool, and not a big commercial success. Was featured by Apple on the App Store a few times, and it's been well reviewed, has good ratings. But like I say, more of a labor of love than what we really wanted to be doing.
Yeah.
Sort of a way to get started, though.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So with Race to Sun, then, first of all, how close would you say the game is to being finished?
Oh, that's a good question. Finished is this is one of the unfortunate side effects of having instant distribution on the net.
Yeah.
Games can, you can always say, oh, there's that feature we wanted to add, and
Yeah.
well, maybe we can still add it. So it's very close to being what we would call, I guess, what I'd call feature complete per our Kickstarter. On our Kickstarter, we had a few features that we really pushed. One was the world creator,
Of course. Yep.
and another was the multiplayer relay system. And both of those are very, very close to being functional and something that we could share with our players. So those are sort of the main things, and we're very, very close. We're still expecting to do a release this month that will have hopefully, if all goes according to plan, we'll have those features in it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, that's really cool. I'm happy to hear that. I'm going to talk about the online and the multiplayer side of things in a bit, but I wanted to ask first, can you talk me through sort of the process of how you came up with the idea of Race to Sun, and how much of the original concepts and ideas that you had, how much of that exists in the final product, that hopefully the final product will be as you want it to be?
Sure. So the initial concept, well, maybe I can step back and just tell you a little bit about our process.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So we we decided pretty early on, after we had released that initial Monkey Drum app, that we wanted to throw together a lot of ideas, a lot of prototypes, and sort of let the best rise to the top. So we did that a few times, and actually created long lists of concepts and ideas, with the help of some other developers who do similar processes, we actually came up with a rating system, and so this will be our number one idea, and this will be our number two. Race the Sun started with just this really just a sketch. It was actually Google SketchUp of just this open area with a few little objects in it, and Aaron actually had the idea of saying, well, wouldn't it be cool if you could it was just a high speed, racing through this landscape, and we could make it procedural so that it would just be endless. And so that was a kind of a cool concept, and he actually whipped together a prototype in about 2 days, I think, where you were racing through this procedural landscape. There was a little triangle that you were racing. Unbeknownst to us, there's a online Flash game called Cube Runner, which uses a little triangle. Neither of us had ever played it.
I was going to bring that up because I remember being about, because I'm 25 now, and I remember being about 15 or so. And I don't know if it was that specific game, but there was a number of kind of those type of Flash-based games which ate up a lot of my time in computer technology, which is why I probably didn't get the grade that I was destined to get. So I was wondering, so that was completely by accident then, that the two games were quite similar in their core function.
Yeah, we don't. A lot of people don't believe us because it's so similar. I mean, we love the game actually. When we saw Cube Runner, we thought, "Oh, this is great." We're not offended at all if people say, "Oh, it's like a 3D version of Cube Runner." That's fine. Fun is fun. If a game is fun to play, we don't mind being compared to it. So
yeah. Well, to be fair, I mean, everything has been influenced by something at some stage or another, whether it's games, films, music. So it's very hard to have, shall we say, a completely original concept.
Right, and if it is completely original, it's likely not going to connect with anyone because we won't want to do it, So
yeah. So I was going to say as well, with that, how much is Star Fox in there at all? In terms of just like the field of vision that you have, and like some of the objects and the way they are very like. When you have the cubes that are rolling over and starting to fall down, it's very similar to what I remember in like the Venom levels of Star Fox and Lilac Wars, although actually it wasn't called Lilac Wars in the US. I think it was just Star Fox 64.
Mm-hmm.
How much sort of kind of influence was there?
Oh, definitely there. Yeah, they're different games in the sense that, I mean, Star Fox is on rails, and our game is kind of this open world, but the fact that it has sort of that endless runner, always forward motion deal, it really has a similar feel where it's sort of like this. You have to deal with the obstacle in front of you. You can't really just turn around and go the other direction. And we just love that, the way that we loved how Star Fox has that simple read. You see this object ahead of you, and it's gonna fall, or it's gonna move up and down, or it's gonna do something, and there's a little bit of a learning process. You probably will miss it the first couple times, but once you learn what that object does, you sort of have that in your arsenal, and you know what to do.
Yeah.
We just love that aspect of it. So yeah, heavy influence there. Yeah. Obviously, the mechanic's a little different because it's not really full up, down, left, right motion. It's just the left, right.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say, because Race to Sun, it feels a lot more streamlined in that's just, you can go left, you can go right, and that's how you avoid. Was that an intentional process at the beginning? It's like, that's what our idea was, to have the game feel a lot more streamlined in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. We wanted, one of the goals we set out with was 2-button controls. We wanted to be able to control the essential function of the game with 2 buttons. Part of that is just, I mean, as games have advanced and gotten 3D, especially flying games. So another thing, once we started getting on PCs, we started with the Microsoft flight simulators and all those sorts of things, and there's just a huge barrier to entry there. It's not fun for the first 10 hours or so, where you're basically learning how to control your vehicle, and we didn't want that. We wanted something you could just jump in and have fun with immediately, not really have to think about the control. It'd be more like an arcade, where it's just it's twitchy, you know. You're trying to control your nerves and remember the right move, you know.
Yeah, and it's a very immediate type of game in that you pick it up and it's pretty much okay. Yep, this is exactly what I need to do, and you know I think that a lot of the more of the depth will come with the world creation tools and that sort of stuff. But it's a very very simple gameplay mechanic, and it works and it's very effective, and I really like it, which is why we're having this conversation right now. Can we talk then about the world creator and how was this in the original design process? Like, this is something that we would like to have, and like, because if I'm correct, it's the world creation tool is what you used essentially to make the game, and then was it a case of, oh wow, we can take this and we can do more stuff with it?
Yeah. So the world creators of that actually it wasn't initially part of the design. Conceptually, we thought we could write some algorithms that would sort of place objects in the world and create interesting things.
Yeah.
In practice, that turned out to be really boring. So just, you know, I kind of see that in our prototype. We've got an alpha prototype. Well, it's an alpha, I guess, not quite prototype. It's a little beyond that, but up on Congregate.
Yeah.
And the initial one used that system where it would just kind of scatter buildings out, and we tried tuning this algorithm a lot of different ways, and there was just never the diversity. And then related to that, to create any kind of animation or interactive objects in the world, we basically had to model them from scratch, create animations, you know, and import them into the game engine. And it was a time-consuming process for a two-man team.
Yeah.
To create a large amount of content would have been. We probably would have been at it for another year before we actually had, a real diversity of interesting things to run into. So my brother Aaron had created basically a pattern editor where we could say, okay, well, we can at least place these objects in a grid kind of, and hand tune some more interesting moments, and that helped. But then what really drove us was we started the Kickstarter with this gameplay and this simple world editor, and the response was not great. People like the concept, they like the aesthetic, but we just didn't see that kind of energy that we were looking for. That this game has to happen. So it drove us back to the drawing board a little bit. We said, okay, how do we get the game that's in our heads out into the world as quickly as possible? And at that point, my brother said, well, I can create a tool that'll let us, basically build this game faster. And, this is what it's going to be able to do. And he started throwing these ideas out, and we kind of jammed it together. We said, okay, yeah, this is what we need, but we only had about 2 weeks to make it.
That's ambitious.
Yeah, and honestly, I said this isn't going to happen. There's no way, you can't make a tool of this power, in that amount of time. But it turns out that actually making tools of this sort is actually my brother's specialty. He built lots of scripting tools for other programmers in his AAA work.
So he's no slouch then.
Yeah, no, and he's very good at it.
Yeah.
So he had a concept that he'd been building in his brain for probably a good part of a year that he was able to just put into code and get functional in the game. So what we did was I was rebuilding the gameplay while he was building the tools. And when I needed a feature, I said, I need to make this block do this, or I need to, I needed the ability to make this sort of animation or whatnot. And he would actually code it in, send it back to me. I would put it into the game, and we just worked that way for about 2 to 3 weeks straight, and when we just rebuilt everything in the game with this world creation tool.
So how does you talk about with the grid setup? How does that work with the procedurally generated system then?
Oh yeah, that's a big question. Actually, we've got to do a blog post or something on that, because that one keeps coming up.
I imagine it would be. Yeah.
So the way that the system works is you've got a grid. It's a 64 by 64 grid. And you can place any object on this grid. And then you give that grid a rating. Say this is a region 1 or a region 2, or maybe a region 4 through 6 difficulty. And you can assign that to any given pattern. And then the procedural system will grab a few patterns in each difficulty level and actually build the world out of them. So it actually rearranges those hand-tuned patterns on a daily basis. If that makes sense. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
each pattern is sort of a sub-object of the world that gets spawned out into the world. But you have a lot of control. You can actually string patterns together and say, well, if this pattern spawns, then I want these patterns to spawn next. So you can create longer sort of puzzles or trap kind of things.
Okay. And how much kind of content can you put in one of these grids? Because you see games where they have this really awesome tool of, okay, you can create your own levels and stuff. And then I remember specifically like when the first Trails came along, and I thought, wow, or actually no, it was the second Trails, and it's like, wow, okay, I can make whatever I want, and then I was just limited to however much it was, and it's kind of disappointing, and you never really go back to it afterwards.
Sure.
And I mean, it's to some degree, sometimes it's better to be very limited to what you can do, because you have to be more creative with it. But when you're just a casual gamer who just wants to play around with it for 5 minutes, you tend to get bored pretty quickly.
Right.
So how much like kind of content can you get into your own made level then?
You can do a lot. We haven't, to be honest, at this point, we haven't actually introduced any hard limits. Eventually, we do want to do some sort of robust actual poly counts in the game itself, so that we can kind of give an indicator to whoever's creating, what sort of performance they might expect from what they're making.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, essentially the way that it works is I can go back to actually the creation of an object. So the objects basically start with these really primitive 3D shapes, a block, a sphere, and they're all sort of, the sphere isn't a true sphere. It's definitely clipped, it
Yeah.
all kind of has that Star Fox look to it. But you can take each object and sort of create a parent-child relationship. So I want to, connect these two blocks together and make a different shape. You can skew and stretch and then animate each object in that group. And that all becomes one single object. So you might have 20 objects that are part of this parent object. Now that single object can be placed in the world and into that pattern all over the place. So it's a little hard to describe without visualizing it, but it basically what I'm getting at is you can put a lot into a single grid. Probably more than would actually be playable, that you could actually navigate in game.
Yeah.
So,
And how will this be set up for? Because I'm presuming that someone can just create a level and then they can upload it for other people to play.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So we really want to do an in-game browser where you can go in and see what other people are submitting, and kind of play through them and rate them. So there'll be a bit of a kind of a community boosts there, where people can pick the best content and you can find it easily. Probably initially, I should mention that these world files, we call them world definition files, are they're all saved in an XML format, so they're tiny. I mean, the entire game as we have it right now, I think compresses down to like, I think it's like 50K or something like that. So they're tiny. So probably initially it'll be sort of a hands-on process. If you want to just grab that file and email it to your friend, and there'll be a working directory, that'll just grab all of everything you're working on. So it'll be a real simple kind of, save that file, email it, do whatever you want with it. But then we will eventually implement an in-game browser system.
Yeah.
And once we've got these sort of these initial worlds into this, there'll be ratings and things like that. But basically, the cream of the crop, the top rated ones, will actually become part of the core game through the portal system. So if you're flying along in a given region and you see a portal, you go through that. Where you go into is actually one of these user created worlds that's been voted to the top, and people say, I want to see this one, and you actually play through it. So for that given region, you'll actually go through somebody else's user created world.
Can you sort of explain the technical specifics behind that? Like, how complicated has that been to implement in?
Yeah, so conceptually it seems it seems hard, but realistically, because of the entire world definition is just this XML file, and everything else is being driven, from the game itself. And there are virtually no textures in the game, so loading up, the load times are pretty non-existent,
Yeah.
on PC at least. So realistically, there really isn't any technical limitation to just having this other world file just pop in.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to
Um,
say, because obviously the game, the geometry is pretty simple in its design. Was this made in Unity?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
because especially with some people that I know and myself personally as well, it's a great engine for just taking cubes and objects, and it's very simple, primitive geometry, and just kind of messing around with it and seeing what you can do with it.
hmm Yeah, and it definitely supports the higher poly counter. You can import any model into it, and that's sort of the direction we started going. But we realized we really wanted to keep it this simple, clean aesthetic, and at the same time, make sure that it was going to perform well on any device.
Yeah.
So,
Although it does still look very nice, like the way you've got the lighting set up, has that kind of, you're looking straight at the sun, and the lighting that you've got working for it gives the game a really nice look. Even obviously, the geometry is still pretty basic.
cool, thanks. Yeah, it's something that was definitely a work in progress for a long time. Neither of us are particularly, experienced in 3D art. And we have friends who are much better than we are. and,
Yeah.
but ultimately, we kind of embrace that limitation and say, "Oh, no, this is something that we can do here," and yeah, I think it came together. So.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I mean, I think like you look back to the days of Atari, and you've got these squares that are supposed to represent like an adventure, where you've got this weird mashed up thing that looks like a duck, which is supposed to be a dragon, and you're a tiny square and you're supposed to be a person. And as a child, we'd use our imagination, and I think it's the same thing can apply to 3D games now. You can do the same thing where you can, obviously there's that ship does look like a ship and the house does look like a house, but you can still use your imagination to a certain degree to get the full extent of what the developers are trying to create.
hmm Yeah, and I think we've seen developers really embrace this idea of sort of minimalistic graphics that allow for the imagination to engage. I think of like Thomas Was Alone,
Yeah.
just the name alone it's so evocative, and then you realize you're playing as a little block, um,
Yeah,
just
I would say, I think, and just as many people would probably say, is that you might be a talented designer, but you can't find an artist to work with. So it's like, right, squares, cubes, that is what I am working with.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, as said, that the game is built in Unity, and I presume you heard the other day about the news that iOS and Android devices will now be free to develop on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this something that you might be looking at for Race to the Sun at some point?
Yeah, for sure. The game, even though it is pretty simple, you're moving at a crazy speed in game, so
Yeah.
it does push some limits there, and also because the animations are essentially being driven dynamically. They're not really baked into anything. You're just driving those animations from this world definition file. So there is some processor intensive things going on. That said, the newer devices, tablets and phones are powerful gaming
Yeah.
devices. So we really think we'll be able to hit a pretty wide range of mobile devices when it comes time. So
Oh, that'd be really. Would like to see it on like an iPad or something. Would that be kind of specifically? We might be throwing out ideas here, but would you think that would be more specifically tilt based, or would you try and keep it kind of touch based?
we'd probably do both.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm not. The standalone PC version incorporates brass monkey
I was
controls.
going to talk about that because that is the coolest thing I've ever used in my life until I get my hands on an Oculus Rift.
Oh, cool. Sweet. So, what was your experience with?
I was expecting to use my phone and then it to have like say half a second of delay between it and the game, but actually it was as responsive as it needed to be to work, and it was fine. I felt that the tilt control was a little bit loose, like I was feeling I was having to pretty much turn the phone on the side to get an immediate turn to the left or right. So definitely not as immediate in that sense as to just pressing the buttons either way. But I still progressed pretty far into the game using just the tilt controls. So it works. It's a really cool idea and a really cool feature.
Yeah, so that was we had thrown out the idea of, oh, maybe we could try, experimenting with tilt controls, using a smartphone or something like that, and just see how it would play. And then we discovered the Brass Monkey guys. They actually reached out to us, and
Oh, really?
that's yeah. So it was cool. They're really great guys based in Boston, U.S. here, and been phenomenal indies themselves, and kind of scrapping at the bottom here, trying to get noticed.
Yeah.
But it's great tech. It really
Yeah.
is.
So was that like after the game was up on Congregate that they see that there and thought, okay, we can use
Hmm.
that? Was that them?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And they
Awesome.
reached out to us, and so yeah, that's been our experience too. Is that the game works really well, and part of what we've discovered is just there's a bit of human lag in the movement. Just tapping a button, whether it's on a controller or keypad or a touch screen, is this immediate response. And the tilt controls. I don't know that I can't think of a particular game we've ever played with tilt controls that I can think of that was really snappy.
Yeah.
I think part of that is just the limitations of the actual devices. The accelerometers or the gyroscopes they have in there they can only read with a certain amount of accuracy. They're not particularly designed for gaming. They're more for determining the device orientation and things like that.
Yeah.
So you'll lose in some cases a good a good amount of milliseconds in there, and just trying to um, you know clear through the noise and figure out which direction the device is turning. But it's still a fun mechanic, and it's sort of an alternative way to play. So if you get really good at the touch controls, it's kind of fun to say, oh, maybe I can get through this. Can I get as far using the tilt controls? So,
Yeah, I think it's just a really cool feature that just adds another way of playing the game, and you look pretty cool having the screen at the other side of the room and being like, yeah, look at me, check me out with my phone.
right. So yeah, that's probably real similar to the implementation, where you'll be kind of an either or both and,
Yeah.
however you prefer to play the game. We'll keep tuning it. That's, still, we'll try to make it as quick and responsive as possible, but I say the tilt itself is probably always going to be an option along with the touch. So
Awesome. On your profile, it says, and you also mentioned as well that you're a musician. And as one musician to another, I'm going to have to ask this for the specifics here. What are we talking about exactly?
sure. Music really, I call myself a musician, but I'm one of those, I always feel like an imposter because I'm one of the guys. I strum my guitar and I write songs. I'm that kind of, singer-songwriter, musician.
Yeah.
So, calling myself a musician when there are other people out there like, Danny B style and Whitaker Travella, making music for games. I feel a little embarrassed with those guys' level of talent, but yeah. So I guess Race to Sun is my first experience with actually like writing music for to be recorded into a game like that.
So was the music was all directly your input?
Yes, yeah. It's still a work in progress as well. It's I haven't spent anywhere near the amount of time on the tracks that I want to, but
Yeah. Well, this is the
it,
thing, because I was talking about this in my Let's Play that I did, but I was going to ask kind of if there was any philosophy behind the soundtrack and the audio of the game, because I found that playing it was a much more I had a much more calming vibe when playing it than I was expecting going in. I was expecting this fast, frantic, smash my controller because I was getting frustrated because everything was flying at me, and there's still moments like that as you get it further into the game. But at the start specifically, the music, it is upbeat, but it's not as frantic as I was going to be. It was like, was there any choices in the design ideas you had to begin with, or was it just, okay, here's a cool idea for a song, I'm going to put this in?
hmm Oh, definitely. No, we had put some filler music in there that was kind of thumping techno kind of thing. And yeah, it was pretty intentional not to go that route, just to try to create something really what we want the music to match the whole aesthetic of the game, the feel of the game, where it's sort of, it feels like there's, in a way, we want it to feel like there's something important going on. There's something meaningful going on, and you can read all kinds of imagery there with the sun and it being your life source and that kind of thing. But also the world itself is very barren and open, and I don't want we don't want the music to sound necessarily too busy or frantic. We want to feel open, similar to the world that you're racing in. And yeah, we want to be able to play for hours and not have any kind of brain hemorrhaging going on from the music too. So.
I was going to say, like, with this idea of it being quite open as well, and I don't know whether this is intentional or whether it's just something that still needs to be implemented into the game, but flying past objects, unless you're very, very close to an object, you'll get like that sound of passing something. But other than that, there's not this sound of feeling like you're, traveling at speed. Was that sort of intentional stuff as well?
Yeah, we'll probably add a few more little audio cues in there. But again, yeah, the ship just has a real, very subtle little whir to it, almost imperceptible. And yeah, we just kind of want to have this really clean, open sense to the world and the sounds and everything. And everything we're trying to keep it sort of pure, I guess would be the word that I'm looking for.
Yeah, I get that. I definitely get that vibe coming across. So as you said, the game's had over 500,000 plays on Congregate?
Yeah, we're coming up on 500,000.
Yeah. And obviously we had as you mentioned before, we had a Kickstarter campaign, which was about $20,000, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
Which was successful. How quick did you reach that goal? And do you feel that like that game was an indication that the game was on people's radar? Because on the flip side of that, we're looking, and you had a blog post up about Steam's Greenlight and how you're finding it a struggle to get the notoriety on there that you would like. So I was wondering if you can kind of talk about your experiences between both of them and like problems that you might see with either of them.
Sure. Yeah, so the Kickstarter was an adventure. It like I say, it started out really slow, and we were on a trajectory that we probably were not going to be successful. And I think part of it was just that we had launched that Kickstarter pretty early on, and in the I mean, it was the game just wasn't. It wasn't where it needed to be, I think, to grab people's attention. But after we buckled down and were able to reproduce the game, I mean, and create a lot of what we'd intended all along, and sort of raise that bar, then it started taking off. And in the last week of the Kickstarter, we went from, I think we were under 25% funded to fully funded in the last week.
Oh, wow.
So it was a real it was an adventure. We actually crossed the finish line within 4 hours of the deadline, actually. But yeah, we saw kind of a night and day response from the initial launching of it to when that new gameplay footage came out, and all of a sudden the press wanted to talk to us, and and people were sharing it all over the internet and things like that. So yeah, we definitely feel like the game is worth the attention. We feel like it's gonna. We honestly feel like it's gonna be a hit.
Yeah.
So Greenlight has been, I guess, another story. We did. What happened with Greenlight is, when they came out with the idea, we said, "Oh, this is awesome." We don't have to try to figure out how to get a publisher or how to contact people at Valve. We can just put it up there, and all the initial documentation said, yeah, put up your alpha content, put up your concept art, and let this be sort of a community building thing. And so we did just that. I think we were on Steam the day it launched. So there are hundreds of thousands of people coming in and viewing the site, and there was this massive backlash from Steam users. They just did not want to see they did not want to see pre-alpha content on
Yeah.
anywhere on the Steam platform. So even if it was on Greenlight, so we got just a massive backlash, downvotes, and it was pretty disheartening, but we learned a lot from it. So ever since then, it's been sort of feels like we're kind of battling back up this hill, of saying, okay, come back, and take a look at this again. Now that we're in beta, now that we have much more finished content for you to look at. So.
Well, how's the response been now, since then?
Oh yeah, it's like night and day.
Yeah.
Initially the vast majority of our comments were negative. This is this should be free, put this, I think it hurt us that we did have it up on Congregate, because that's a Flash portal, and there's a perception that that's for, freemium games, and Racism won't be a freemium game. We really designed it to be a PC game. That's what we want it to be initially. But now after we've sort of gotten the newer content up there and the new video gameplay, it's been overwhelmingly positive. Lots of upvotes and lots of people who have decided to share, about our project. So
awesome. Well, I mean, I'm hoping it does well because I've played through it, and it's a really cool experience. I like what you've done with it, and it saves me having to dust off my Super Nintendo and play Star Fox. So I was like, I got a version to play here. No, just kidding. One other question I was going to ask, actually, because the way that I was introduced into this game is Mike Biffle retweeted something that you said about, hey, look, here's our game. If anyone's on YouTube and doing this sort of stuff, please take our game and give it a crack. And obviously this was in response to Nintendo's little tantrum that they had last week.
Yeah,
to put it mildly. And so I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on all of that, because there's been shouting both sides about it, and there are bits and pieces from either side that are perfectly reasonable to listen to. Obviously, Nintendo, they can do whatever the hell they want, and it's not fair to say that oh look, YouTube players, they give games exposure that they might not had before. It's like, well, it's a Nintendo game, it doesn't really need that. Obviously, for indie developers, for some of them, this is a vital way of them getting that exposure that they wouldn't get otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So, just overall, just wondering what your thoughts on the whole situation is.
Yeah. So I think that there are all kinds of legal things regarding the rights of content creators and things like that, and I'm sure not qualified to comment on any of that, and even I know that those laws vary from country to country.
Yeah.
And but I think I guess what I'm really struck with from Nintendo, and even now I think also related to this Microsoft, some of the announcements about the new Xbox that are coming out, is some of these large companies are really out of touch with the way the world works.
Yeah.
They don't understand the power of the internet or the power of community to either promote or demote a product. And I think that although these companies have, they have the advantage of huge install bases, massive caches of money, they're working towards irrelevance, and I think in some ways that's sad. The days of the console maybe are heading towards an end. I'm not sure. But the flip side is I really think that the indie community is going to thrive. There's going to be people turning away from, okay, well, if I can't get this innovative game on my Xbox, or I can't do a video of this Nintendo game, I'm going to turn to an indie game, and we'll focus on that.
Well, it's interesting that Microsoft have done what they've done, especially with the showcase of the Xbox One. But Sony, on the flip side, seem to be really embracing this pool of indie talent, which for quite a significant portion of the PS3 they weren't too interested in. And it bit them in some ways, and there was other issues as well. But now they seem to be really fully embracing this indie community. And they've taken a lot of the kind of Twitch TV and streaming, that sort of stuff, into account as well. So do you think it's not even going to be a case of just indie development will thrive on their own? Is it they're by the looks of it. Obviously Microsoft still might announce stuff at E3, but at this moment in time, it does seem like the indie development scene will be filtering more towards Sony, as they seem to be more fully embracing, especially as well with this announcement that the XBLA and XBLA indie setup is going to be no more. It's just going to be a free-for-all on the home screen, which I think is a catastrophic idea.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And Sony is, I don't know a lot about the inner workings, but we're talking to Sony.
Yeah.
We're talking to them right now, and our interaction with them has been phenomenal. They're not only are they allowing indies to self-publish on the platform, they've hired people who understand the indie community to be the go-between. So you're not talking to a corporate suit who has no idea how games are made. You're talking to somebody who's on the ground, who understands what indies are going through, and it's a phenomenal difference to work with them. And yeah, I think the idea of inviting people in, where it's like I say, it's not a free for all. There's a lot of intentionality, and they're filtering off a lot of the stuff that just doesn't belong on a console. But I think that they've got a huge head start on just about everybody else, and they're really doing a lot of things right.
Yeah, well, I hope the talks with Sony pay off, because between that and specifically with the PS Vita, like I've had no interest in buying a Vita since it came out, but it's driving me insane not buying one now because of some of the games that are coming out on it. And I think something like Race to Sun would actually be a perfect fit for that platform in particular.
Yeah, we'd love to see it on the Vita. And we've tuned the controls for controllers all along as well. So definitely something we'd love to see.
Well, I will keep my fingers crossed and hope it all works out for you. And I guess I presume you might not be using the Xbox One as your gaming device for watching television, which seems to be their pitch currently.
Yeah, I'm not sure. This whole idea of it making this sort of your all-in-one media console, that really seems pretty, 2001. I feel like people bring their media devices with them now.
Yeah.
We have iPads, we have smartphones, we have lightweight laptops that we can play games on and watch movies and TV and everything else. And with products like Steam, Netflix, Hulu Plus, it's pretty hard to even imagine somebody investing lots of money into another box that just duplicates all of this functionality, but is married to their TV set in their living room. I don't know.
Yeah, it feels like it's more sort of barging in the way of all of your ways of media, or your content of media. It's just kind of barging in the way, saying, oh look, no, I'm here now, this is it, me, all the attention on me. And yeah, like even at the most minimum, if you're playing a game or whatever, you have either your iPad or you got your smartphone or you got your laptop, and it's like, if I want to constantly look at my Twitter feed, I have that. I don't need my Xbox or whatever to do that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole multi-screen thing, where you're doing, snapping apps to one side of the screen so you can do that while you're watching TV. And I'm thinking, you're going to do that on your smartphone. You're not going to be, why bother wasting the space on your TV when you've got that in the palm of your hand? I just didn't quite understand the concept, I guess.
Yeah, I think the way I was looking at it, and I think it was a comedy routine. It was what Bill Hicks used to talk about with the Super Bowl, in that the Super Bowl was at the point now where it's all about the advertising. No one, you don't need to watch it for the actual Super Bowl. And it's like with the Xbox One, it's like, the last thing that's to be talked about with it is the games. It's everything else. And I find that disheartening.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm an old school at heart. What can I say?
and they'll get a lot of, people will buy the device, and who knows, maybe it will be a hit, but I feel like the world is moving away from fixed large all-in-one devices, and much more towards mobile devices that really can do everything that I think the big killer is the Kinect. The Kinect is impressive technology, and
when it works.
When it works, yeah. But I don't know that its best use is games. I mean, as a a Skype box, something that you set up in a corporate office somewhere that will allow you to track faces and do really efficient, high-tech Skype calls. Maybe it'll find a home there. It's just not what you think of when you think of an Xbox. It's like it's used to be a gaming device,
I will say, watching the conference the other night when Yusuf was flicking between all of the different screens, it was like, I've never seen a man look so smug in my life. And it's like, you really thinking you're going to sell the Xbox just on, oh look, I can flick my screen across and I can flick it and I can grab the screen and I can pull it out and inwards. And then I was thinking, yeah, actually, there probably are people that are sold on just that idea.
Yeah.
But they're
Well,
not cynic like that.
yeah. I mean, it's cool in Minority Report, but I just don't know if people want to watch TV that way.
Maybe people just want to be Tom Cruise. Maybe it's
Yeah,
just that.
could be it. Yeah.
Well, I think we'll end things here. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. I very much enjoyed this, and I obviously wish the game all the best of luck. I'll have all the links up for it, and hopefully we can get a bit more exposure on Greenlight and getting some more thumbs up for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate it, and it's been a blast.
Yeah, well, definitely keep me posted with the updates on it, and if you ever want to come back on at any point and you can talk about whatever you want, this is what this platform is for.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you for listening. As I said, all the links will be in this post somewhere, so you can do what you need to do, and we'll see you again next time.